This is a pretty long unit. All right. We're on 3C.1 quadratic formulas. Okay. Quadratic formula is leading us into our polynomial unit, is what we're starting. Polynomials are just it's like quadratics, cubics, quartics. It's just multiple terms being added or subtracted together. Does that make sense? So we start off with the smallest here, which is our quadratic. In our past unit, 3B, we were talking about solving quadratic equations using isolating x or by factoring, correct? Well, what do you do to solve a quadratic equation when you can't factor it? Well, that's where the quadratic formula comes into play, okay? So our objectives are to solve a quadratic equation, use the quadratic formula, and to solve problems modeled by quadratic equations today. This is a quadratic equation. It's a quadratic equation because it is a second degree polynomial that is set equal to 0. Does that make sense? That's what makes it a quadratic equation, okay? From here, you have A, B, and C. Your A is always with your x squared term. Your B is always with your x, and your C is your constant. Agree? All right. That's in standard form. Everything I just said is written there, right? Next, quadratic formula. The quadratic formula comes from someone realizing that there's a pattern. Every single time I calculate or solve the quadratic equation, I notice something, and they realize this is what takes place every single time. First, it's called b squared minus 4ac. This is the middle of it. If your b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, meaning negative, right? Because the numbers that are less than 0 are negative. The equation has no real solution. That's important right now. We will get to imaginary solutions later on in this unit, but it's important right now that we understand that there are no real solutions, okay? Next, you have b squared minus 4ac is greater than or equal to 0. If it is greater than or equal to 0, that means you have 1 or 2 real solutions, okay? All right, here's the fun part. This is your quadratic formula. Does that look familiar from Algebra 1? Okay. When I was in 8th grade, my Algebra 1 teacher taught it to us in a song. I've been singing the same song for now 22 years. I can't stop singing it when I say the formula. So it's just going to have to happen. And here we go. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey, okay. Nice. That is the quadratic formula. I cannot say it normal. I've tried, but in the midst of it, I'm going to start singing it or trying to harmonize it or whatever. Even when I just do b squared minus 4, I can't even just say that by itself. It's ingrained in my brain as a song. So let's try it all together. Here we go. Ready, set, go. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey. Okay. You lost me. Not gonna lie. We're reading it. All you're doing. It's right there. I don't know why you're looking at me. Right there. Let's go again. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey. Okay. That's the quadratic formula. I would just write it down. It's okay. It's all right. Because by the time we get to the test, you will be singing and writing it because it happens every year. So you can be in denial of it, but you'll be humming it to yourself. It's cool. So we're going to use it. Are you ready to use it? Okay. Now, again, reminding you, what are we doing? You're going to identify your A, your B, and your C. You then are going to evaluate your discriminant, which is going to be underneath the square root. And from there, you'll know if you're going to have no real solution, 1 real solution, or 2 real solutions, okay? All right. And here we go. That's called our discriminant. And again, it should be written at the bottom of your paper what it means. Yes. B squared minus 4ac. That's what's underneath the square root. All right. Up first, we have 3x squared minus 4x minus 1. Okay. So we're going to identify our A, our B, and our C. Our A equals 3. Our B equals negative 4, not positive 4, negative, because it's minus 4. And minus 4 is saying you are adding a negative. Does that make sense? And our C equals negative 1, which follows the same guidelines. Now you're going to be plugging it into the formula. x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey, so we're going to plug, we've identified our variables. We're now going to substitute them in. So we get x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Hey, put it down. Questions so far? And now you're going to start evaluating. A negative times a negative is a positive. I should have did a different color. Negative 4 squared gives me 16. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12. Negative 12 times negative 1 is positive 12. All over 2 times 3, which is 6. I'm going to put a little highlighter around this because okay, so based on what I have here, I'm going to have 16 plus 12, which is what? 28. So we have x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 28 all over 6. My discriminant is positive. It is greater than 0, which means I have 2 real solutions. A 6. Okay, which is I have 2 real solutions. And to get those 2 real solutions, it branches off. You're going to have 4 plus the square root of 28 divided by 6. And you're going to have 4 minus the square root of 28 divided by 6. And those are going to give you your 2 approximate real solutions. Yep. If it's positive, you have to do both. If it's negative, that means there's no real solution. I'm going to go to my handy dandy calculator. So in the calculator, you can see I've already inputted. Notice that I input my numerator in parentheses because it has to take place first. So I have 4 plus the square root of 28 divided by 6. And then I have 4 minus the square root of 28 divided by 6. And these are my 2 solutions. Or it was there. I don't know what happened to it. Uh-oh. My calculator is glitching. Well, let's practice round to the nearest thousands. All right. If you're not good at rounding, remember you always can switch the mode of your calculator. If you're using a handheld, if you're using Desmos, you can't do that. But if you are using a handheld, you can switch the mode. I think in Desmo you can tell it to round. Pretty sure you could. And if I put it in, enter, it'll round for me. And it mode. And then you go to the numbers. All right, so we have 1.549, 1 in 549 thousandths, and then we have negative 215 thousandths. And those are our 2 real solutions. Does anyone remember doing this in Algebra 1? Nope. It
was so easy because you just plug stuff in.
Okay. All right. Guess what turn it is? Oh my gosh. It's your turn. Okay. What must be true in order for you to solve this, though? It has to equal 0. So before you get started, make sure your equation equals. There you go. Okay, go. Go be great. Go and be great means to work on the paper. I'm not helping with that right now, Max. Not
No, yeah.
for solvents or this. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about. on your computer. Sorry. They're right there. Place under no C, huh? Okay. I would like to. Wait, before this one, we can do that. Remember, it has to be equal to 0 or use quadratic formula. And is this equal to 0? No. Nope. Any values. That's all I'm asking you to do. Don't worry, we'll get a little challenge in a minute. Exactly. It has to be equal to 0. Good job. All right, remember, you can talk to each other and check with each other. Make sure you're on the right track. Okay, okay, thank you. X equals negative. Bro. I'm not gonna lie, I make me.
Negative 56 for the square root. Is it 4 minus 6, right? 15. Oh, yeah. So,
They have to equal to 0.
yeah, over 10. Can you plug this in?
Does it mean when they're negative? Huh? What does it say? If our discriminant is negative less than 0. What does that mean?
It's under.
Can't take the square root of a negative number. A negative of a negative is always going to be a positive.
Is it kind of weird how like some Greek dudes just came up with algebra and stuff?
Not weird.
They're like, let's make the whole thing clear.
Yeah. I'm about to go over it. All right, here we go. So in order to use quadratic formula, this needed to equal what? 0. So before you start it, you should have 5x squared minus 2x plus 3 equals 0. This is your A, this is your B, and this is your C. So you get x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Yes? There we go. And we get 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 60 all over 10. This gives me 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 56 all over 10. It says to check your discriminant before you go on. What do I know about my discriminant? It's negative. It is less than 0. And because it's less than 0, do I need to go any further? No. When your discriminant is less than 0, that automatically means that there is no real solution. Got it? Yes? All right. So example 1 and example 2 are examples that you should have possibly worked with in Algebra 1. Okay. Example 3, we're going to take it up a little notch. Example 3 is going to be more of an Algebra 2 type problem because there's manipulation that has to take place before we can solve. Does that make sense? All right. So right now, our variables are in the... Oh, no. What do we do? Okay. We have to... Fractions are our friends. That's why. We have to get them out of the denominator. Anytime you want to get a number or numbers out of the denominator, you're going to have to multiply everything by their least common denominator, the LCD. What is your least common denominator? For this problem, our least common denominator would be x squared. So we would have to multiply everything times x squared. So when we say we're multiplying everything times x squared, it's x squared times 7 minus 4 over x minus 5 over x squared equals 0 times x squared. In order to multiply, that means we're distributing. What is 7 times x squared? 7x squared. What is 4 over x times x squared? 4x. And then x squared times 5 over x squared is 5. Was that terrible? Do you now have your clearly defined A, B, and C? Yeah, you have A, you have B, and you have C. Solve for my x. Go. X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC divided by 2A. Hey. I love the battle with the You're proving her right. Oh, copy here. Not with a copy. I did not find a copy. Let me clarify. Sure. Do we have to put that? Huh? What do you mean? X equal? Yeah. I mean, is it gonna hurt you? Is that if you don't plug in the rest of that stuff. Yes.
No, but the point of my question was that is a positive. That's not. Oh, okay, that's not.
35.4.
I don't like.
Whatever.
I forget how to do basic.
How is that this class's fault?
It's your fault.
I am getting it back into your brain. You're welcome.
No.
I'm helping you bring basic math back to life.
What's 4 times 5 times 7?
It's negative 4 times negative.
It's a negative 5. So negative 4 times negative 5. Negative.
Oh,
Yep. Well, that's
16. 16 plus.
No.
What? What did you get? This is less than 40, right? So
Yes. Back.
Sure.
Yeah, I put the 8 water and so yeah.
It's negative 4 times negative 5. No.
That's a little weird. Look.
It's A times C. Yeah.
Mom, so what?
So 140 plus 2. Yeah, what's your A? So it's 4. I swear.
Alright, the first one is 1.178.
All right.
Second is negative 0.50.
See how we did. You got the setup? All right. So your setup, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Yes? So we get x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 140 divided by 14. Because this is going to be positive, we know we're going to have what? two solutions. So we have 4 plus the square root of 156 over 14. And we have 4 minus the square root of 156 over 14. Yes? And we're going to plug these into our calculator. Okay, if I'm using a calculator, it doesn't have the fraction ability. I got to make sure I protect my numerator. So 4 plus the square root of 156. I did not mean to put that guy there. Delete. 16 plus 140. -4 times -5 is 20. 20 times 7 is 140. Divided by 14. So there's my positive solution. I'm going to grab my positive, turn it into a minus. And we get, so you should have gotten 1 and 178 thousandths and negative 606 thousandths. How do we do? Remember, it's not about if you have basic math skills. That's why I said I'm encouraging you to either use decimals or a handheld, decimal scientific or a handheld to do your calculations. Okay. All right. Doable? Okay. Our last piece is word problems. Okay. It's a nice word problem because I drew it out for it and everything. All right. So we're constructing a box. So does everyone understand that a box comes from taking a rectangular piece of paper and cutting out the corners of different sizes and putting it together? Okay. Hopefully you did in geometry. Remember your nets, your geometric nets, what makes what in geometry? Okay. So this square piece of metal, they cut out 5 by 5 square pieces on the corner. When they cut out the 5 by 5 square pieces on each metal corner, it created this box, right? And it wants you to find what are the dimensions of the box. Well, they give us our height, but there's a formula for our width and our length. Does that make sense? Altogether, we know that it holds 1,125 cubic meters, okay? What should the dimensions of the piece of sheet metal be? So we're going to take what we know and we're working backwards. We know that our outcome is 1,125, and that's our volume, correct? What is the formula for volume of a rectangular prism? Length times width times height. We have our length, we have our width, and we have our height. So we plug in what we know. We know that 1,125 equals x minus 10 times x minus 10 times 5. In order to solve this using quadratics, we have to be in quadratic form, right? X squared plus b squared plus c. And we have to be equal to 0. So we got to work our way to get to that. Does that make sense? So what is the first thing we need to do? FOIL. The first thing we need to do before we subtract, we need to FOIL. We need to simplify the side that has parentheses. FOIL means is just a little cute way of remembering to double distribute. Does that make sense? FOIL just means you're double distributing. Okay, so we have 1,125 equals x times x, which is x squared. X times negative 10, which is negative 10 times x is. And negative 10 times negative 10 equals 100. Okay. After I've double distributed with FOIL, what's left? I need to distribute the 5. So everyone's going to get you get a 5, you get a 5, you get a 5, you get a 5. So we have 1,125 equals. As I distribute my 5, is it okay if I combine the like terms in the middle? Yes. So we have 5x squared minus 100x plus 500. So we double distribute with FOIL. We distribute our coefficient. And now we are down to what? Making this what? Equal to 0. And how do I make it equal to 0? There we go. We're subtracting 1,125. So we get down to 0 equals 5x squared minus 100x minus 625. Okay, you are here now. At this point, you could go straight into the quadratic formula if you don't mind working with large numbers. If you do not want to work with large numbers, you can divide out the GCF. What is our GCF? 5. I can divide everything by 5 and work with smaller numbers. So when I divide everything by 5, we have x squared minus 20x minus 125. Yeah. Okay. So at this point, you have a choice.